Good morning, it's me, and a lot of downloads are coming through, so I figured I might as well just get online and record what I'm receiving. So first, I'm receiving a download regarding, it seems to be a major theme, but it's responsibility to our own creation, right? And by that, we can definitely refer to that as our children. So the way it first came to me was in the form of the question. So the question was, okay, if I'm taking care of my children and I'm doing the best of my ability, but these children were created, it wasn't just myself that created them, right? So me and the parent that co-created this child with me would understand that we equally must provide for the well-being of these children. And so when I kind of walked through that scenario in my head, which was explaining to this parent how much is reasonable to support the children on a monthly basis, I can hear the objections that were coming through, the justifications for why it's not reasonable, feasible, or whatnot. And none of them made any sense, and I couldn't come up with one logical explanation to make sense of it. Because there is no making sense of it. You always have the energy to support your creations. The thing is, how do you prioritize what you've created? Because if your ego desires take first seat in terms of what holistically is best for you, that means being able to see that we are far more than just the ego. And recognizing that, you can't discard that is a truth. You can't discard that is how it is. And so creating a program that says in your own mind, I'm going to believe in getting what I want because, there is no God. So I'm just going to be basically very selfish and to hell with responsibility and to hell with other people and my responsibility to them. You can get away with that for so long without any evidence of wrongdoing because you truly, genuinely believe that, and that is your prerogative. But something ends up happening where eventually you can't gaslight yourself any further. You cannot go into the world every day and witnessing what you see, what parents do for their children, how parents do it for their children, how much of a priority children are to parents, and what justifications people have for why they are not actively parenting their children. Who are actual children? We're not talking about adult children at this point. I'm referring to children, actual young children, still teenage children. Like, you cannot justify it enough. There is no justification. Oh, my spouse is a crazy bitch. Or, oh, she makes it impossible for me to talk to them. None of that is a reason to not take care of your responsibility. No amount of gaslight story of how she's spending that money on herself with another dude, or how she's spending that money just to look good so I could look like, none of that is even a factor. Because once you do your part, you can clean your hands with what that other does with that. And you could say that that's an injustice, because it is an injustice. But it's not for you to determine it, because you're creating your own injustice by controlling the situation instead of letting it go and letting God handle it. And by that I mean karma handles itself out. Dharma handles itself out. The grace of God is there for the innocent. And by the innocent, I'm referring to the actions that you take unconsciously. You cannot be punished for. You would learn probably the hard way. But those things that you do that you get punished for is your own program of knowing you're out of alignment with your true, authentic self that knows the right thing to do, and purposely keeping yourself from doing the right thing and then punishing yourself for knowing. So it's like what you project on the other, that the other is making you feel this and making you feel that, making you think this or that, which is your reasoning for not doing what your reasoning for doing what you're doing, which is avoiding your responsibility. Whatever justification you created in your mind to avoid responsibility to what you created, or co-created, I should say, whatever blockages are created of that, whatever misaligned realities that creates for you, is a matter of purposely blinding yourself, consciously or unconsciously, to avoid doing the work that it takes to be in alignment with doing the right thing. And doing the right thing is your ability to recognize that your soul knows what is the correct thing, what is out of love, what is truly out of love and compassion for yourself and others. And that you can gauge by how peaceful you feel within with your choice. Your choice, you know, it was what you should have done, or what you should do. You can gauge correctly that if all things were in order for you in your life, that you would actually choose the route of being supportive. If you had everything you needed and you were content and your life was perfect and you had the lifestyle and luxuries and everything you believed was your life that you think is so valuable, if you had all of that, you mean to tell me that at that point you wouldn't be with generosity and wanting to include even your haters? Like, even out of compassion or empathy, you don't think that you would be like, yeah, the haters can have, a little section over there of enjoyment. Let them enjoy from my harvest. That's the thing. When you overflow in love and compassion, it's very hard to keep out even those that you consider your enemies. So So when you're not taking responsibility for your own child, how blinded must you be in reality? How much gaslighting are you creating for yourself to create the victim story that you can't take care of what you created because there's some outer force, some outer reality that makes you be what you're being? So what you're saying is you're being used by whatever concept you created in your mind to subjugate yourself from being the best version of yourself, which when you are the best version of yourself, you're taking very good care of yourself and your needs. You're taking very good care of others and their needs. And to what extent is to how much you feel those individuals are under your shield of protection. So when you don't even care to have others under your shield of protection, when you're just protecting yourself and you don't care who gets screwed over, you're not in alignment at all with what is grace and what is God and what is all powerful, all true. Like, you can't even say that you are a conscious individual. Because if you are, you would realize that your consciousness, however wide and grand it is, if everything in it isn't perfectly wonderful to you, if you can't see it at its best, because it's maybe not perfect, right? Let's say you look out into your world and it's not perfect. There are things, but how much of those things are within your own purview? How much of those things are within your own grasp? So you cannot have compassion for that which you don't know exists. But when you do know it exists, are you compassionate? And that doesn't mean are you sympathetic, where you pick up on and you sympathize with how they feel, meaning that you fall into the feeling of that experience, where you can drown yourself in those muddy waters or in those deep waters. It's one thing to be able to observe it and empathize for it. It's another thing to fall into it. Anywho, the point that I'm trying to make is that when we're given the gift of creation, and what we create with that is children at the maximum. You can create a business, you can create a craft, you can create a way of doing something. You can create art. You can create music. And all those things can influence humanity. So when you create a child, you've created a being that can affect all of reality. And so until that child should be given the opportunity to grow in the most functional, most healthy, most abundant way possible, to nurture those gifts, to nurture those qualities, to nurture those ways of being that amplify the best of both parents. infuse that into the child. And by the best should be the understanding of the whole nature of each parent, the positive and the negative. But the negative shouldn't be looked at as evil, bad, or wrong. It should be seen as a power that, when honed in on, is very powerful and useful when it comes to having the stamina or the will to withstand the darkness, having the stamina and will to move forward despite obstacles, because those moments arise in reality, in real life. Those challenges come about. And it could be as small as going out and getting your first job, to going out and meeting someone new, going on a date with someone that you hardly know. I mean, it can range from something as small as that to something as big as being the leader of a nation and making a choice that best works for your nation and doesn't affect the nations of others in any way, shape, or form, impacts them in a negative way. Like, to be able to coexist in the same space without infringing upon the other. That in itself should be the ability of consideration that we give to our children, that they're creators of their own worlds. And do you want to create creators that create great worlds, or do you want to create creators that create awful worlds? Those that came before you created a world in which you exist, that you had the gift and potential to change and shift into something different, something better. Did you create a different and better world for what you created? Or were you just a puppet to those that created your world and perpetuated that world in yours, and then added some seasoning, so to speak, of your own little mischief just for fun and laughs because you don't think it's a big deal? Well, what do you think you're doing into the future generations if every generation thinks like you? If you're thinking in terms of destroy everything and just think about me, or just concern myself about me and forget that I have a responsibility to others in this life, in every life, then you might do things differently. You might do things more effectively. You might do things with the least amount of repercussions that can negatively impact, because what you're creating is a dynamic that has no option but to self-destruct. And it's evident when you see the choices and ways of being that people take on, because you cannot think that you're going to nurture or you cannot, don't expect that you don't nurture a child at all, or that you only do so for a little while, but then you're not in the picture, or you're not in the process, or you're not involved, or you're not invested in how that grows, how that individual grows. You cannot expect that individual to imagine you in their world. You don't even fit in the world that they exist in if you're not invested in it. If you're not a pattern of their own being. So you can create a child, but if your pattern of being goes against that child's pattern, it's innate understanding of its own power. Like, you cannot even withstand it. You would be exited from that child's life. And sometimes you are exited from that child's life for your own understanding, for your own growth that has nothing to do with that child. So sometimes we look at it like we're making these choices of being in people's lives, not being in people's lives. But I'm referring mostly to our own children. And it's like, you cannot pretend that it's not the most important thing that you give to the world that is your legacy, your child. And every child is someone's legacy. So, thank you, baby. So if you have a legacy that you're not proud of, or if you have a legacy that you don't even like, or you have a legacy that you are looking down on like it has nothing to do with you, think about what that is actually saying. Like, and by that I'm saying how you talk to your children, how you are with your children, how you recognize who they are and the value that they are. Because you cannot treat a child like the whole paradigm or the whole storyline of a couple has a child and then he leaves to be with some other woman, and all of a sudden he's raising that other woman's also left for bastard child because she's also a single parent with, you know what I mean? And it's like that dynamic or that storyline of how easily a parent can abandon his children because of his sexual desires to, you know, that whole story, that whole line of thinking or that whole process of being just gets eradicated instantly when you understand that your child is your legacy. And if you're not investing in those children to carry the legacy of you, which means the creativeness of who you are, the uniqueness of who you are, if you're not putting that on your children, then what in the world are you doing here? You see what I mean? Like, how are you cultivating your own legacy? If you're not thinking in terms of that, then honestly, what are you doing here? Cultivating your legacy, how so? Because it doesn't mean by having a career. It doesn't mean by having a perfect life, the ideal home or the ideal circumstance or the ideal people or the ideal, you know what I mean? Like, we can create whatever story in our minds we think is the nirvana of existence. But when you really get to the core of it, it's you are a creation. You are the legacy of someone else. If they didn't invest in you and project onto you that you are like that pillar representation of the union of them, then you have to create that for yourself. And then the legacy you leave is that your seeds are the legacy of that which united to be created in that form. Okay, so how did I get there from where I was at the beginning? I don't know, but either way, I think my ego wanted to go in one direction, and then Spirit was like, no, this is where we need to be. Let's talk about it from this standpoint. Yeah, because a lot of times the messages I receive come from the expanding or the awakening of the pain body to be healed, or comes from the triggers that lay dormant, that when awakened bring about a Pandora's box of information that I think you're prepared for, more than definitely prepared for. But is it something you want to deal with at the moment? Is it something you want to look into right now? Is it something you want to experience again? And it's like, oh, how to handle this situation. When those things come about for me, and it's anything that is challenging, I don't think there's anything more challenging than the relationships that we carry throughout our life. Remember, some people are here for a season, a reason, or a lifetime, right? That's what they say. And I believe that because I've had some individuals that in that snapshot of a moment is the ideal. And just as it came, it goes. But it's like you can imagine, you can't foresee where the storyline goes, or you don't even have the full picture of how it started. You just have a snapshot of a moment with an individual that feels like a lifetime. But then there are individuals that are in your life day in and day out. Every day you awaken on your journey, every day you come into reality, these people are in your life day in and day out. How is your relationship with these people? Are you waking up to your daily dream of life and saying, I'm so excited to be here? I love that these people are here. Are you like, think of like, oh God, think of like Scrooge, and when he wakes up basically from the nightmare that could have been, when he, after being visited by the ghost of Christmas future, and he realizes, holy shit, I'm going to die alone and blah, 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 like that kind of dark space. Because of looking, that's such a, I love that story of A Christmas Carol, I think it's, is that A Christmas Carol? Anyway, Scrooge, I think everybody knows the Scrooge. They've made so many renditions of it, it's hard to keep up with what the story's called, actually. But anyway, Scrooge comes back to his reality and starts appreciating all the people in his reality and starts making changes in his behavior because he wants to rectify? Okay. But basically make better what he's already created. So when you have that kind of experience early on in your life and you kind of understand, if you, I guess for me, it was growing up really believing in karma and really fearing getting bad karma. Like I just wanted to be here and be happy and like love and be loved and do what I want and enjoy life. And that was that. But as I started the journey, I'm like, damn, this is a challenge. Damn, people are, you start to see things that are not so like cool. And you're like, damn, this is really not like, people are really like this. Because sometimes you start to think, no, they're joking. It can't be. Like, are people really that angry? Are people really that bitter? Are people really that twisted? And for me, at least, it was like, when I saw myself do something that was, you know, when I realized, shit, I really hurt that person's feelings, or damn, that was, you feel it yourself when you do wrong to a person, or you feel it yourself when you're unjustified in that meanness. And again, does it even matter to most people, like on a moral level, about being mean. I know it sounds so childish too. It's like, don't be so mean. But that meanness is such it's an energy field that comes from a very victimized space. Like people wouldn't be mean by choice if they knew what it says about them, what that vibration is, because that's the last thing that they want people to see them as, and it's the first thing you see. So like a person that withholds from you, that lies to you, that pretends to like you but they really don't like you, and they're constantly hovering over their things, like, you can't have this, you can't participate, you can't be here, you don't belong, you're this, you're that. Like a person that walks around like that has such a dark shell over them that it's like their world is so tiny. No wonder they look like roaches. I don't know why I just got the image of roaches. But, and you see how roaches like gather together kind of thing, right? Oh, I hate fucking roaches. So, and there's people that think of them as pets and they're cute, or I don't know. I personally don't see it. But when you think of the characteristics of behavior, it comes from a certain kind of mindset. And it's invasive and it feels like not cool at all. But anyway, oh my God, why did I even go there? So anyways, I'm looking at the cards. I just opened the deck and I got the Faith card and the Emperor. So there's an Emperor here. It looks like he's praying or tuning into his own self and getting like, I see like spiritual downloads. And this is an Emperor. Could be an Aries. But the Emperor represents all the divine, all the masculines, all the elements. Earth, air, fire, and water. Like someone that has mastered all aspects of themselves. Like that sounds a lot like a divine masculine energy that is self-assertive, but not seeking to control or change the world, but to make his own world great, and those that are in his world great. That's an Emperor. An Emperor is successful because of, by way of his own efforts, by way of his own calling, by way of his own seeking his own inner truth and being in alignment with that which is God within him, and being able to withstand the challenges of life and be able to provide a shelter for those that are yet discovering their own journeys. Because it's a gift when you're able to perceive the world as something to enjoy waking up into every day, and looking at life from the perspective of everything is here for me to enjoy, and not from a greedy standpoint, but from a discovery of self and a level of creation that jolt of joy of living brings. Like, oh, I was given this body, I want to make it feel great. Oh, I was given this mind, I want to feed it wonderful things. Oh, I was given this heart, I want to let it feel all the beautiful feelings it can feel. And I want to give that, I want to share that, I want to explore that, I want to experience that, not just with myself, but with those people that I am lucky enough in life to engage with, I'm curious about them. I want to see into their world. I see nothing but the potential of this other individual. They have a story of their own. They have a narrative of their own. That curiosity of people, instead of looking at them from a victim standpoint or a arrogant standpoint, all the ways in which the ego itself can project onto others, it has its function, it has its purpose. It's there to, the ego is the actor of the soul. The ego is the culmination of its experience. The ego is a representation of all that has already been. So it can change. It can be destroyed. We know that. We know that everything that becomes physical, so therefore your physical body, is a physical body. But if the ego only sees that the body is a representation of itself, doesn't accept its other bodies, doesn't accept that it's beyond the physical, it deteriorates based on the law of reality, I guess. I don't know if there's such a thing, but that it means that it is what it is kind of thing, you know. But if the ego allows itself to dissolve into itself, into the wholeness of self, then the ego that's developed from the spirit, the one that the old ego has allowed itself to become an observer of itself, to see its own creation, to see itself being molded by its own higher self, and choosing different paths, choosing different ways of looking at things. That's that observation in itself, that understanding of itself from that standpoint, has no choice but to create great things, because it is able now to experience everything it's aware of wanting to experience. So it's like there is no enemy there. There is no need for creating a doppelganger personality to self-sabotage. I don't know if I heard the whole thing that I just said, but sometimes my mouth just goes on and my ears hear the words, but my awareness can sometimes take a back seat in a way that is like it needs to catch up to what I just said myself. Sometimes I'm very much into what I say and I'm following it word for word, but every once in a while I feel like those shifts within the perception shifts, I don't know, it's hard to explain. But anyway, well, I decided to pull cards, okay? I have a King of Cups and the Moon with with the Five of Coins. Page of Swords and Justice. Okay. So this water sign is looking into his emotions. He's realizing that he is keeping individuals out in the cold, alone, unsheltered, unprotected, excluded. As he looks over, he sees the truth behind